What Life is Really Like by Beverly Rycroft. So, just want to apologize for what you're seeing on screen right now. I couldn't find a decent enough image online. So, I had to take screenshots of that government PDF that has draft written all over it, that watermark. So, this R and the A and the D stands for draft. But that being said, let us just get into the poem. So, quick summary of it. The poet, she relives some of her childhood experiences when her dad exposed her to a number of experiences that, in his view, would prepare her for life. And his demeanor, it changes after she returns home, recuperating from a more invasive surgery. So, type and form, this poem, What Life is Really Like, it's written in free verse. And the poem, it consists of 8 stanzas and 43 lines of unequal length. So, for example, line 39 is quite long, all the way to silence, and line 41, one saying, is very, very short. So we're not going to do a line by line analysis for this poem. We're going to go stanza by stanza. So the poem, it starts with an instruction from a father to his young daughter. You need to toughen up. But the girl, she experiences it as a complaint about her innocence. The father implies that the child needs to get used to the real experiences in life. In line 8, what life is really like, having practical life experience. Furthermore, the rarely in line 8, it's printed in bold, emphasizing the importance of his message. So, life is not, just sunshines, rainbows, trampolines, and that. It's serious stuff. So, my father would complain when I was small, I ought to take you to see chickens having their heads chopped off. That'd teach you what life is really like, like all the madness, the dangers. That's a very hectic image as well, the decapitation of chickens. So, yeah, the way this poem starts off is a bit hectic. In lines 2, 3, and 4, I know I said stanza by stanza, but for this, we're going to look at it as a whole. So that's stanza 2, that's stanza 3, and that is stanza 4. In these 3 stanzas, the child describes the father using another real-life situation to teach her about the cruelty of life. He forces her to assist when he stitches up an injured pigeon, and the father... Sorry for that little voice break. The father uses anecdotes like, life is a fight for survival in line 25. And you gotta roll with the punches. These are all anecdotes to get his message across. And his child experiences his tone as harsh and angry, and she feels her father forgets that she is just his child and not one of his students at university. So the father is probably a lecturer. He's very nihilistic, this is the reality of his life. Yeah, it's not an easy life. Life is difficult. Your life is easy, but not for everyone else. Blah, 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 blah. That's his whole vibe, So he'd seek me out when one of his pigeons, crazed for home or mad with terror from a roaming hawk, would tumble into the loft, mutilated by wire or by beak. So him wanting his daughter to experience, this portion of life, it's quite hectic, but wants her to see the cruelty of it all. I was the one made to clench my palms round its pumping chest to keep it still while my father's hairy fingers stitched its garroted throat angrily to rights again. So very hectic, gruesome imagery almost here. Okay, so roll with the punches. You gotta roll with the punches and fight for survival. That's anecdotal, so it's almost in italics there. Now, in stanza 5, I, which should be capitalized, is now reduced to a small I, which is in lowercase. Those people that say, I'm writing this in caps and then I'm writing this in small caps. That's basically just lowercase, if you know what I mean. This corresponds with the mood of vulnerability she experiences due to the expectation she had for years and years. It's coming from line 33. That harm will come her way one day. And the expectation is realized when she falls ill. Life is not always that easy. Your life always isn't going to be that great. Bad things can happen. And this is almost like some kind of omen. It's very foreboding, something bad is going to happen to me, and she falls quite ill. Now, in stanza 6, not much of a stanza, but it qualifies as one. This is a standalone line, and it must be read in conjunction with lines 34 and 35. So a bit of enjambment going on here. So as a whole, lines 34 to 36, it is effective that the father who used to want her to toughen up is the one to dress her wounds. So she comes back from hospital after this really heavy surgery, and the father, who was dressing the wounds of, the pigeons, is now dressing her wounds. In stanza 7, the poet describes the way her father dresses her wounds And this is quite significant because he does it in silence, which contrasts with his conduct during her childhood when he was described as being very loud and insensitive, a very harsh man. I mean, look at the way stanza 1 just starts. And in stanza 8, our final stanza, these lines are effectively isolated from the previous stanza. And the poet tells us that her father is now a changed man, and he believes she has received her share of toughening up by the invasive surgery that she experienced. So, some major themes we have in this poem: cruelty, fate, and resilience. So, there's cruelty, fate, and resilience. So, with the focus being here on cruelty, the father believes life is hard, and he attempts to make his child aware of the harshness of life by exposing her to events that are seen as harsh. Examples of these are chickens that are killed by decapitation and a pigeon injured in flight that the father has to stitch up. Fate. Fate is part of life, and human beings cannot act in any way to change the outcome of what has been planned. And the father does his very best to ensure that his child is aware of the cruel nature of life. But still, when the family is faced with a really hectic medical incident that influences their lives, the father is now shocked, and he therefore treats her wounds in silence and realizes that they are now experiencing the fact and all her childhood teachings that life is a bee. I don't want to say that word, I don't want the video to get flagged. And finally, resilience. Well, this is simply put the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness. So, some diction and figurative language that we have here in lines 30 to 32. The speaker describes the toughness expected by her father as a bitter roughness and compares it to a bird of prey almost, as it circles above her looking for a place to land. In line 38, my bulldozed chest, the way she describes the effects of her surgery. Her surgery here, it was a breast surgery, a breast removal, perhaps she had breast cancer, is directly compared to the state of soil churned up by a bulldozer. Maybe they were removing something, a tumor. In lines 10 to 12, the pigeon is described as a crazy or mad person, and it's effective because the speaker successfully emphasizes how unsettled the pigeon was. And we've got a bit of repetition in stanza 5. It's the stanza here. Just made a small star. In stanza 5, we've got waited and waited. Repetition. Years and years. More repetition. And they are repeated to emphasize how the girl always expected to receive a blow from the universe, something bad happening to her. So, the tone and mood of this poem, what do you guys think it is? So, the poem as a whole, it starts on a serious, cautionary tone when the father warns his child to expect life to be tough. But it changes to one of resignation in stanza 7, when the father realizes that his child has experienced her share of toughness. So it's a very serious tone at the start. It's cautionary. And the speaker's mood changes a bit because she's waiting, she's in suspense here. So the mood here is one of anticipation, as she is forever waiting on fate to deal her a blow, something bad happening to her. And just lastly, ending with toughen up. You know, life is going to throw all these major curveballs at you. You have to get back up when you're knocked down on the canvas. You got to keep going. You got to keep moving because, well, it's just the way it is. It is what it is. And, you know, we move. We got to keep moving. See you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.